Let's open the meeting for the Jamaica Selectboard for Monday, December 11th, 2017. And we're here at the town office for our usual gathering. The first order of business is to call for any late additions to the agenda. Sadly, after I produced the agenda, several things popped up, which seems to be the way it goes.
Yeah.
We need to talk about, we need, at the end of the night, have an executive session regarding the settlement. That has to be an executive session. There's a question about, we covered that part, the question about making a new employee full-time. And I don't know if you want to do that in personnel, in executive session or not. You don't have to name names, you can just talk about the position. And then the other one that I need to add is the, we had a Muzzi fund request that came, I got the response. Again, without naming names, we don't necessarily have to go to executive, we can just discuss that we had, and I can explain what the message was. Aside from that, any other additions to the agenda? Thankfully, hearing none, let's move on to number 2. Approve the minutes for the November 27th Select Board meeting. The minutes were all sent out electronically. Does anybody have any questions, additions, deletions? Everybody's happy? I have 2 tiny little ones that I will share with Alexa and ultimately with Pam in the morning. The first one is the motion Joel Blooming moved, number 2. Joel Blooming moved to approve the minutes from the November 13th as written. Probably ought to say November 13th Select Board meeting as written. Pretty tiny. And then the other even tiny.
It says that.
Where does it say Select Board meeting? Where are you reading it? All right, here. Joel Blooming moved to approve the minutes from the November 13th. Right there.
Okay, but above it says select board.
It does.
Okay, you want to add that?
It's a tiny little thing. I'm almost embarrassed to bring it up, but not as embarrassed as I am to bring up another item. Number 5, announced new town road department employee. Paul Fraser announced that a new road crew member was hired. William Bill Flood had extensive experience. I like to change had to has. Had sounds a tad past tense.
Okay.
So you can do that. And then I can share this with Pam, or actually, however you want to do it. Lex.
I'll take
You
it.
take
I
it?
mean, I'll give it, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is
Wait,
the,
do we have to move on that?
oh, the minutes, sorry about
To
that.
accept the minutes as,
Do I have a motion?
to move, to accept the minutes as corrected.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
You're gonna have to correct it next time because you just accepted the minutes, but not the select board minutes.
Yeah.
We corrected it.
We'll, hopefully, we'll remember.
Minutes with the corrections, really.
The next item is number 2, approve the minutes, we did that. Number 3, approve timesheets for the town office, Listers Highway and Transfer Station. And number 4, sign the select board orders, as is our usual procedure. We'll do this at the end of the night so our audience doesn't have to wait around for us to sign things. Number 5, we have been approached by the listers regarding their budget proposal for the upcoming year. Since we're right in the middle of our budget deliberations, it seemed like a pretty good time for them to show up and do it. You are on. Oh, Lou, when the camera settles, then it's Lou Russo is going to be speaking to this issue. And you have a handout too, didn't you?
I'm one of the listers, but I want to make sure you understand, that Micah is also a lister.
May
So
I
we have
make
2
a
of us here.
request before you begin?
Sure.
Would you please, when you present, tell us what the different anachronisms are here?
Okay, did you pass out the budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Then you, okay. When I approached Paul to request a time to discuss the minute or our budget, I expected that we would go to one of your budget meetings. But part of our discussion tonight is going to be to let you know how the listers is planning on operating in the future. And also we have a suggestion that we wanted to make that we thought ought to be made to the full board and perhaps even to the town meeting. So Paul suggested that we came to a Monday night meeting. And number one, gives us a little bit more time to talk about it. And number two, we can do this as well in front of the public. So hence the reason we're here on a Monday night instead of one of your budget meetings.
Thank you for adjusting your schedule.
You're very welcome. As you recall, last year at this time, listers were sort of in a very precarious position. We only had one lister, and that was not sufficient in order to handle the tasks of the listers. But we're very pleased to tell you that we now have 3 listers, and we appear to be doing a pretty reasonable job. We had some mistakes, as you saw in our errors and omissions that we submitted to you, but I think we're learning, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. And you also know that we're going through a townwide reappraisal, and we've learned a lot from that. Part of what we've learned is that appraising property is a little bit more sophisticated than people like us who are really not professionals in this operation ought to do. So that's kind of like why we've changed our philosophy a little bit. And what you'll notice in our budget, proposed budget, is we're asking for a new line on the GL called Professional Appraiser Services. And we've actually done this in the past couple years. We've asked the people or one person from NEMC to come and go to our properties that have been renovated. Yes, an acronym. NEMC is the company that's doing our townwide reappraisal. I think it means New England Municipal Consultants, I think is what the acronym stands for. And they went around with us to some of the properties which were new construction or an addition onto an older structure, and they helped us set a value for those properties. And as you know now, they're going through the same company is doing our townwide reappraisal, and I think Mike has been out with him 1 or 2 times, and I've been out with Ryan about 4 or 5 times, and it's become apparent to me anyways that what he's doing is very sophisticated. And I first of all, I can report to you that we're very pleased with what they've been doing.
Right.
Very professional outfit. You know, we remember back in 2007-8, that particular appraisal did not go well, and we've suffered the consequences of that for the past 10 years. But this company is doing a real good job. So I'm pleased to tell you that. Now, what we've found before we even went through this reappraisal was that our appraisals were getting very stale. What was happening is this particular appraisal was done in 2007. That was when the market was high. And what's happened is the market has dropped significantly. And people who really understood what was going on, especially people who were buying homes, were grieving their grievances. And what was happening is we were having to grant those grievances because the market value of a home when it sells is really what we then have to appraise the property at. And that becomes significantly out of whack with most people because they're being appraised at 2007 prices, where these people were being appraised at 2018 or 2017 or 16 or 15 prices. And what was happening is our CLA was becoming very, very skewed.
What's CLA?
CLA is the coefficient of appraisal or something like that.
Land?
It's the state term for being out of whack. When you get to be 20% or more out of whack, it means that some properties are selling for a significant amount of what they're used to be appraised at, and now they're being sold at much less. So anyways, that was the problem, and what we've been living with that until this reappraisal. And what it's done is created some problems in that people weren't being treated alike. some were not being treated as fairly as others. So anyways, we feel that our change in philosophy is that rather than having 3 listers work in the office a day and a half a week, and that was what our budget in the past has been based on, we would like to take 4,000 of that previous budget and move it into a fund to hire a professional appraiser to do all the new construction and new additions, things that are a little bit more sophisticated. You know, we can go out and measure a shed and put the number in the computer and it'll come out with a result that's pretty fair. But when you have especially a high-end home, we don't know how to evaluate that. And
So that would be on an ongoing basis?
on an ongoing basis. So, and then what we've done is we've reduced the amount of time that the listers would spend in the office to kind of compensate for that. So there's, in fact, we're actually proposing a $2,000 decrease. Last year we had a $26,000 budget for listers' salaries. We're talking about $20,000 for listers' salaries and $4,000 for professional appraiser services. What that would mean is that during the months of March through June, which are the months in which we have a lot of grievances, the listers would still be in the office a day and a half a week, and all 3 of us would be there most of the time. But the other months, the other 8 months, what we would do is we would have only 2 listers in the office 1 day a week, and on a rotating basis, so we'd all kind of share that load. And one of those listers would actually be out on the road looking for homes that are under construction or new homes. Because what's happened is, because we don't have zoning in Jamaica, people don't have to come in and apply for a permit. So we have no idea what houses are being built, what new additions are being added on. So what we're proposing is that the listers, each one of us, will take a third of the town, and every 3rd week we would take our third and go out and actually look at it and look for homes that are under renovation and the like. So we feel that if we can do that, identify those homes, and then for those 3 or 4 days that the people from NEMC come in, we would identify those homes and then go with them to do that evaluation. So that's sort of a philosophical change that we're talking. I think it adds a lot more professionalism to what we're trying to do. There's a lot of office work that needs to be done. Number one, we have homesteading things that have to be done every week. We have current use things that have to be done every week. We have people coming in looking for lister cards. So there's an awful lot of office work. So we still want to have somebody in the office 1 day a week to handle all of that kind of activity. But this is sort of a change in philosophy. So that's the first part of our budget. The second part of our budget is lister expenses and software maintenance. I tried to list out the things that we have to pay license fees for. Patriot license. Patriot is the new program that we're using beginning next year, and that license is about $1,200 a year. NEMRC is an acronym called NEMRIC. That is the program that we've used in-house, both for the land records, for GL, for all of our different town software. So that license stays the same. It's about $1,400 a year.
GEL.
Pardon me?
GEL.
GL.
GL is.
General Ledger. I'm sorry.
Brian does.
Well, Grand List as well, but General Ledger is what I was looking at. Right. ArcMap is our mapping software. That's about a $500 a year license, and other software, things like Norton, virus protection, stuff like that. So we're looking at about a $3,000, which is the same as what we had in the past. And we're also looking for $3,000 in other expenses, print supplies, things like print cartridges, things like that. This $800 for map printing, we haven't done that in 50 years. We haven't printed new maps. If you go in and look at our maps, they're 1967 maps.
Where is this item?
It's called map printing.
Oh, okay.
What we're doing is we're part of a state project. The state has trying to get all of the towns in the state up to the same quality and the same standards in their mapping, and we're very close to that. And over the 3-year period, all towns will have to do this. And once this is done, our maps will be up to state standards, and they'll be released to the public through the A&R Atlas and through other websites.
Is there any grant programs for these things?
This is a grant program. The state is paying for this. Yeah. Now, other towns, for example, who don't have any electronic maps, they're actually doing all the research to get those electronic. So we're actually getting very little of this grant money because our maps are pretty much up to state standards. But anyways, the total for that particular portion of the budget is $3,000, which is about the same as what it was last year.
Can I ask a question for on this topic?
Sure.
You're saying that the map printing is paid for by the state?
No, pardon me. That's wrong. The project to bring the maps
Bring it
up to the state standards is paid for by the state.
Okay.
The map printing, though, they don't do the printing. We have to do the printing.
All right. So they'll release it on the internet and then we have to get it printed?
Correct. They bring it electronically, and if we want hard copies, we have
Who
to print.
prints this?
We can either use Wyndham Regional Commission to do it, or we can, there's going to be a mapping company that's going to be doing this part of this project. We may use them to do it. We don't know yet because this project just started. So it'll either be one of those two entities that'll do it. And then the last item is the reappraisal fund. Now, let's talk a little bit about that by turning over to the back sheet. You want a copy, Jules? The back sheet, the cost of the reappraisal was about $142,000. Now, that seems like an awful lot of money, but the good news is that the state gives us a certain amount per parcel for this, and over the years, we've actually accumulated $142,000 in our reappraisal fund. So it isn't going to cost us anything. I'm not going to say anything because we have been putting some money in our budget towards the reappraisal. There is a line item on the budget called reappraisal fund, and that's been about $5,000 the last few years.
We're at 142 now.
Pardon me?
We're up to 142 now.
142, which will cover pretty much the cost of the reappraisal.
But then we have to kind of do that every year until the next time
We should.
in order to
That's correct.
have this nice thing happen this time.
Correct. The state will give us approximately $12,500 per year. And if you add that, if it took us 10 years to get to our next reappraisal, that would be about $125,000. And then the $5,000 that we would put in every year would get us well over whatever the projected cost would be for that reappraisal. So that's why we have $5,000 in the reappraisal fund. However, we've been wondering, we've been concerned why, how to get us out of the same jam that we were in. Why, if we waited 10 years, we're going to be in the same jam. Because 10 years from now, the market's not going to be the same as it is now.
It's going to be up or down.
It could be up or down, exactly. So we talked to the president of NEMC, and he had a suggestion that a lot of towns are going to. And when I talked about it today with Terry, she said that it's pretty much what Stratton is doing, and Wardsboro is doing something similar, only they're doing it in-house as opposed to hiring professionals to do it. But Bill's suggestion was a 5-year rotating system where every year 1/4 of the town would be, we would collect data. And the reason I say collect data is because that's what Ryan is doing now. He's only going out and looking at every house, collecting data, square footage, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many fireplaces, wood stoves, etc. He's collecting data. And then at the end of this reappraisal, the president of the company goes in and he does a complete sales study. And he does a statistical analysis on all the properties and balances everything so that everybody's treated the same and everything is based off of the last 3 years of sales. So if everybody's treated the same and it looks like everybody's appraisal is higher than what the sales have been, then the whole town gets brought to the same level. Or the same thing could be true in the opposite direction. So this statistical analysis is done at the end of the process, so we have a grand list that is fair, hopefully, for everybody in town.
At the end of the 5 years or the end of each year?
At this time, at the end of our current reappraisal. So what he's talking about, this is what will happen next April, is Bill will do this statistical analysis. What he's talking about is reappraising a quarter of the town every year over a 4-year period, and then in year 5, doing a statistical analysis similar to what he's going to be doing at the end of this reappraisal, so that the data gets collected ongoing. It's never put off until the last day of the last year of a 10-year period, and we do the statistical analysis every 5 years rather than wait for 10 years.
How much variation would take place with the first quarter being the first year, and then at 5 years, you're looking at the numbers that you did the first year? How much variation would?
There probably shouldn't be too much because, remember, all he's doing is collecting data. So except for new construction and additions or porches or decks or whatever has been added on, you're really using the same data. The data hasn't really changed that much over the course. And the idea about doing it every 4 years or every 5 years is to try to keep this data more relevant.
But isn't it matching what what's happening? No, you know what I'm
Yes,
talking about?
what's happening now, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think what
Right.
I was referring to is collecting the data over 4 years.
Right.
And then in the 5th year, that's when you do the analysis. So by that time you have the entire town.
Okay, but numbers in sale prices fluctuate during that time.
Correct. And the statistical analysis will be based on the last 3 years of sales.
Okay.
Every time you do an analysis of statistics, it's with the last 3 years of sales. So in essence, you've got a couple of years of sales based on your what will be our current year, and then we'll do an analysis of the next 3.
How often is the state reappraisal? Is that every 10 years?
No. You don't ever have to do a reappraisal if you can keep your numbers within that CLA. That's 20% above.
That's
So it's
common level of appraisal.
common level of appraisal, right? So as long as you keep your appraisals within that, and there's also another number, COD.
COD, that's.
And that's basically, if your COD is at 100, that means that you're exactly on. You're selling properties at exactly what you're listing properties at. So the closer you keep your COD,
CLA.
no, the COD,
COD should be.
I forget what that means. But as long as you keep it around 100, you never have to do a reappraisal. And that's what Wardsboro is trying to do. Keep their COD right at 100. And the problem is that you have to do it more often. You have to keep on top of it.
Do you
So-
think- Oh, sorry. Do you think financially it'll be better to do it this way?
Well,
Because
that's,
it's expensive when you have.
I
a
try to list
reappraisal.
both options here. Using current dollars, we know that our current appraisal is $142,000.
Right.
Bill told me that you could figure on about $90,000 every 5 years for this statistical, 4-year ongoing in the statistical analysis. So over a 10-year period, that would be about $180,000 as opposed to $142,000. So then I tried to see how we would pay for that, and if we continue to get 12,600, and usually that number goes up a little bit every year, over a 5-year period, that would be about 63,000, and the 5,000 we put in every year would be 50,000 over 10 years. This is over a 10-year period, no, 5-year period. So that 50,000 is wrong. It would be 25,000.
Yeah.
So I guess I gotta do the math better. 25,000, that would make it about the 90,000 that we were looking at. Yeah, about 88,000. So that's pretty much, if we kept our current $5,000 a year funding in there, it would cover that same 90,000.
So it would cost less, or be more cost efficient.
Right. So then the question is, well, what do the taxpayers get by spending 40,000 over a 10-year period, or basically $4,000 a year? And what they get is being a little bit more confident that they're being treated fairly, that we don't get so far out of whack that some are getting more benefits than others of the change in the market. So anyways, I wanted to bring that up to you. I don't want to have a decision tonight. All I wanted to do was to bring that up to you, to think about it. If you think that this is something that we ought to talk to the town at the town meeting, we can do it at town meeting. Or if you think that it's something that, I think the listers have the authority to do it on their own anyways, but I don't think we want to do that on our own. I think we, number one, at least like to get the advice of the select board, and number two, if you think necessary, we should talk about it at town meeting.
But this number has to be in the town budget.
Well, right now, we have 5,000 already in there. And the question is, do we want to continue to keep that in there? Because right now, you could probably lower that to 2,000 or 3,000 and hit the 142 or whatever the inflated 10-year price would be, maybe at that time.
So what's the total number that you're asking to be put into the budget?
Right now, 5,000. We're asking for 5,000, which is what.
That's not the salaries, though.
No, if you look at here, the bottom
Yeah.
bottom line of the budget page
The
is
reappraisal.
the reappraisal fund of 5,000.
How come we're not putting in the salaries?
Oh, you are.
We still have to put that in.
You're putting all of
Put
it.
that in the budget. We'll put
Yeah,
it
that's
in the
what I
budget.
think
All
that's
these
what I said.
items, 4,000, 20,000, 3,000, 5,000,
That goes in the
those
budget.
are each line items in what your request is for your budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Every one of these is for one of the GL items that are in the budget.
That's already there.
Right. We're asking for an additional GL item, which is that professional appraisal services.
Okay.
We're asking for, but we're reducing
Reducing
the listers' salaries to, in fact, we're actually asking for $2,000 less than what we got in our budget last year.
If I may, I have a question. And it goes back to what you were talking earlier about reducing the amount of time in the office in order to find the funds to pay the outside people. And I'm not sure that I understand whether you're talking about 3 people in the office for 1 day or the office being open for 3 days with 1 person in it.
Okay. During the March to June timeframe, that's when the lister's office is really busy. That's when we're doing grievances, that's when we're doing all kind of state things. Current use is pretty hot at that time. So during that time, we're looking to have the office open 1 day a week, and then all 3 listers to be there for that 1 day a week, open to the public.
Totaling 10 hours in the
No, that's 7. And then 3 hours on Friday, not open to the public, where we can work without being
Administrative.
disturbed. And any public that couldn't make it on Thursday could make an appointment for Friday during that 3-hour period. So-
And the rest of the year?
Okay, so 4 months, 3 listers, 10 hours a week. And that comes up to about 10,000. Then the other 8 months, we're talking about 2 listers in the office every week, 1 day a week for 7 hours.
And 1 on the road?
One of those listers would spend part of that day on the road.
But when the office is opened, all 3 listers will be there between March and June, simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
Same thing in July and February, 2 listers will be there the entire.
Well, they'll be working that day.
Except for one of them who will be on the road.
Well, right, I don't expect them to be on the road for the whole 7 hours, They might be on the road for 3 or 4 of those hours.
What's the present situation
Right now,
with filling the office?
Right now, we've budgeted for 3 listers to be in the office, all for 7 hours a week, plus an extra 3 hours a week during the March to June timeframe. That's pretty much what we budgeted.
Okay, but I'm taking my cue from you about, I'm sorry to do this.
No.
No, you're,
Let me ask the question kind of, do you get a backlog of people trying to get in on that one day a week?
No. The thing that we do most for the public is give them their appraisal card. We call it a lister card. So, and we also will print out tax maps. That we do during the course of those 7 hours. However, if Realtor especially, or the public, needs one of those during the other 3 days of the week, Pam is trained to do that. So Pam does that for us on Monday through Wednesday.
So they can always get the information they need, the people that come here. They would just be able to talk to the lister if they had a question. They'd have to say, you know, the girls would say, come in on Thursday or Friday, or whatever day they're there.
Which
Or
sort
give
of,
them a call.
which sort of brings me to the question I was going to ask. By the way, as soon as you start asking dumb questions, I'll cut you off. You're doing fine so far.
I've been told on many occasions that there are no dumb questions.
That's very true.
When he starts giving you dumb answers to your questions, I'll cut you off. So here's my question about exactly what you both are leading to, and this is with the reduction of hours of the listeners. What extra burden does that put on Pam?
It doesn't put any,
None?
no, it really, when I'm there on Mondays,
Yeah.
you might have 2 people come in and a Realtor and say, may I have a lister card, please, or may I have a map?
Right.
It's not, they're not there lined up, you know.
And in fact,
20
on
of them.
Thursdays, as long as one of us is in the office, we can handle it
Right.
without any problem.
It's not,
Okay. So it's not, you're comfortable it's not an excessive burden on Pam?
no.
That was my question.
Pam kind of likes to use the mapping program, so.
She does, but she also has another job that she's supposed to
I-
do.
No, this doesn't take
Okay, that's good. That was my question.
hardly any time.
You're open how many days now?
Just 1 day a week.
Right now?
Right.
Oh.
I mean, we could, you know, spread it out and have each listed there one different day, but the problem is that we need to talk to each other.
Consensus, we need a consensus.
We need some kind of
for
consensus, especially during grievance time,
decisions.
especially during grievance
I
time.
mean, the 3 of them, they need to know what's going on at all times.
Right.
Right.
And then the Friday, the half day on Friday is by appointment. If somebody needs to come in, all they've got to do is call us. And we can
And
make
for
an
that
appointment
matter,
for
if they
them.
couldn't make it until Monday, we could do it on, I mean,
Yeah, I was
one of
just
us-
wondering
one
what
of us would do
happens
that.
to people that would not be able to do it on that one day. Always.
Well, thank you very much. So we will take this into consideration. We're going to be talking about the budget,
Yep, that's our request.
and we'll look at this. And it's a pretty good presentation. I like the numbers, and they look like they are well thought out.
I do think that we might really want to consider changing our philosophy long range.
There are people out there whose property values are still at the 2007 values, who've never grieved, so they're paying property taxes on excessive values that really aren't relevant anymore. And I'm sure vice, you know, the opposite is true as well. So everybody gets to pay a relevant fair share of property taxes this way.
I'm wondering, and I suppose we'll have to talk about this at some point, whether or not that goes on the town warning,
Yeah.
because that's a significant change. So that may be, because it's a shift, that dramatic shift, that might be worth taking to the town.
Yeah, as I said, it's not a big budget shift,
Right.
it's mostly a
It's a
philosophical.
conceptual shift.
Right.
You know, and the people who are benefiting from the current system are elected, the people who will win are. So see who shows up to vote.
Yeah. Well, actually, most of the people that will be voting will be the ones that will benefit. Because the ones that benefit the most are the ones that are buying properties and then grieving them based on their sales price.
Excellent.
I have one question. Do you, either of you, have any hunch of, with the new appraisal, how the town is going to make out in terms of income?
Well, the percentages, will they not be adjusted according to whatever the town needs?
Right.
And a lot of it-
The income itself is based off of your tax rate.
Okay.
So let's say the total grand list is a particular number X. And let's say the grand list comes in lower, the tax rate will go up. If the grand list goes up, the tax rate will go down. The main advantage to a reappraisal is the fairness
Equality.
of this guy versus this guy.
Goes across.
That's what the reappraisal is all about.
Thank you very much. Any other further questions? I think it was a great presentation, I appreciate it. And we will certainly be in touch with you because we know where to find you.
So, my last thought, if I may. At $88,000, we're talking about, we're short over a 10-year period. From 142, we're now at 170 something.
Well, it'd be about 88, I think.
That's 5 years, but this is
Over
10,
five.
this is 10 years.
Right, so if you take 88 times 2, it'll be about $4,000 short. And so if we as a town decided to change this philosophy, we probably
It's
want to up that.
$20,000 or $30,000 short. This 88 becomes 176 or something.
Right, and this 90 becomes 180.
No, but, and what happened to the 142?
Well, see, we're actually got more money than, we've been putting more money than we actually have needed in the past. Which has actually been just about right, because as I said, the bill was 142,000 and our,
I'm confused because this is $176,000 over 10 years. We're talking about $142,000 over a 10-year period. That's $30,000 more.
right, our income is $30,000 more than our expense would be. If we decided not to change philosophy, we could take that 5,000 and reduce it if we wanted to. Or we could leave it there knowing that inflation might change it.
It will be interesting to see how you put this together when we put it on the town line.
Yeah. If we do.
But take that question in mind because that sounds like one someone's going to ask.
Right. If we did it, we'd put out an RFP next year
Yeah.
for the first 5 years.
There we go again. What's the acronym for?
A request for a proposal, or you now use RFQ, right?
Thank you, Sir. Actually, I belong to an organization where they use the initials, and you have to pay money when you use them. And boy, it does change the people's ability to not do that and use the real words.
All right, if there are no further questions, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The next item we have tonight is the winter operations plan, which we presented everybody last session. The idea was to have everybody review it and act on it tonight. Has everybody had a chance to review it? Anybody have any questions about it?
I don't see any changes needed.
Well, there's only one change, was I think I told everybody number 6 on page 2,
Writing,
from a walk behind to a writing
yeah,
stone wall.
I mean, any big significant
I don't see
changes.
anything either.
By the way, the sidewalks yesterday, when I went to church, were just wonderful.
He did a good job. Yeah. Did a
Yeah,
great job.
the mower was good, I saw, and it took him an hour and a half.
Did
to
it?
do
Hour
all
and a half
the
for the whole
sidewalks.
town.
The whole town?
Where before it took a long
It was really good.
We'll see what it's like Wednesday.
Is that?
Yeah, we'll
see what it looks like. Yeah, exactly. Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon. So then we all feel like this current winter operations policy is adequate? We just need to-
We accept the town of Jamaica winter operations policy.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who seconded that?
Is that
Who seconded it?
Joe.
Joe? We will accept the winter operations policy. Excellent. Next item of business. Joel actually asked me to add this to it. Would you like to discuss it for about 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Start
Starting when?
5 seconds ago.
Okay. We should do it.
That's easy.
No. Well, we discussed the fact that we should have a 1-hour presentation, and I agree with that.
Before you go there, I'm not sure everybody on the camera knows what we're talking about.
Okay, we're talking about the informational meeting on January 3rd. Where we'll discuss the feasibility of doing a water program in the town. So the meeting will only be concerned with doing the feasibility study and why it's an advantage or a disadvantage to us. We discussed privately the idea of having a 1-hour meeting where we have several presenters coming in terms of just informational presentation, and then a half-hour discussion afterwards where people can ask questions, and they should ask questions, and we also discussed the fact that that half hour should be fuzzy, so that if there are a lot of questions, they should be asked. If there are hard questions, they should be asked. We'll have people available who can answer those questions, and people who could answer the negative questions as well as the positive questions. And then on January 9th, the town will come to a special town meeting, which is warned, where we'll vote on whether or not to do the feasibility study. The bids, we heard 3 bids, and we selected the Dufresne Company to do the presentation, and their fee is $7,000. So the town will be discussing whether or not to spend $7,000, not to put in a town water supply, but to discuss whether we want to do a town water supply. Okay, so we're only discussing doing feasibility study. We're only discussing spending $7,000, and the select board decided that this should be something that the town votes on, not the select board.
Can I make just one little fuzzy adjustment?
Absolutely.
I don't think we're voting on whether we should do the water plan. We're voting on whether we should do the feasibility
I
study.
said that.
Yeah, you said that a couple, then the last, you got to the do thing.
Okay.
Just clear it up.
Right. So we've selected a company to do it. Now the town has to decide whether or not to authorize it. That sums it up.
Thank you.
I just have one question. You're not going to keep to rigid timeframes in terms of the town questions?
The more information that we have, the better. So if the presentation lasts for an hour,
Right.
and we've decided to have the town moderator govern this, administer this, and the question period should be probably about a half hour, but if it ran an hour,
That's
if there
what
were
I
that
wanted to
many people there who had
Okay,
real questions to ask, whether they liked the idea or didn't like the idea, there'll be people who can answer them intelligently.
that's what I was asking, whether the half hour was a rigid, no time past that. But you're saying, yes, it will be,
It will not be
if
rigid. It will-
if the need is there.
Right, and people
Okay.
don't, people can stay or not stay, and there will be very
Mhm.
intelligent people giving their opinions and answers.
Should be a very interesting evening.
Yeah.
Part of the only part that we're gonna try to hold rigid is the hour, because
Yeah.
there's lots of people who wanna talk on this subject. We're gonna try to contain it to feasibility versus water projects in general.
But the people who are coming can be there and not get up and talk. They
Yeah.
can be there just to answer questions.
Exactly.
So not everybody might get up and give a presentation, but there'll be people who can say, yes, there's this grant, or no, you can't drill a well anywhere. So whatever information we can get, whatever information the town can get, will be of value, whether or not we do a water supply. And also, Paul told me that we're going to have Ken come and record this so that it can be on the town website, so anybody who can't come to the meeting can see what we've discussed.
Yeah, Joel's put together a pretty, I think, comprehensive group of people to come to provide education and assistance on this, so it should be a very good meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And now I have a time for public concerns. Is there a concerned public among us? I'm getting a cold stare. Moving on, we would, a couple of things we'd like to do. Number, the first one I'd like to say is that we have a new employee. And the question is whether or not, we have, for background, we are facing a state mandated, basically, restructure of our ditches and access, control of water into the water stream. Lots and lots of things are coming up in the next couple of years. It just, with 3 guys, it's gonna be a real problem. We have been able to use a 4th person temporarily, now that we filled in our 3rd person slot. And so the concern is if we could add our part-time employee on a full-time basis, that would allow 2 people, 2 sets of people to work at the same time in town. So we don't have 2 guys working a job, because most of the jobs involve 2 guys, and 1 guy trying to find little things to do. One person has to do it. We would like to have 2 people on the project. It's safer, it's faster, it's more efficient, but it costs money. And so I asked Terry to give me some numbers, and it comes out to, with wages, retirement, FICA, and insurance, the total package is $45,604 a year. That's the cost of the 4th employee. That's actually the cost of our 3rd employee, so it's about the same.
What's the difference between what we pay that temporary employee now? We're already
I don't
paying,
have that much.
We don't pay insurance, we don't pay.
Yeah,
but we pay something, so there's a number against this 40.
Right, we already pay him, I don't know his hourly wage, but we pay him a fair wage.
Right.
So he's
Is it?
So we can subtract that number.
$17-something an
We can
hour.
subtract
We do,
that.
and I apologize for not having that number in front of me so we can tell you the exact cost. We can certainly find
It's like
out.
17-something an hour.
Yeah, I
that
think
we
it-
pay him now, and he's been working 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
Oh, so then this is not that much more than what he's
No.
already getting.
No.
4, 6, 8 or
And
9,000
like Paul
dollars.
said,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the state, with all these new rules and regulations from the state that we've been listening to, and after talking with Keith a few weeks back, he feels it's very important that they have 4 people, because when you're doing the ditching, which is going to be the crucial part, 2 people can work on the ditching and get 1 road done, partially done, however time frame they have, rather than just one doing it and not finish. You know, it'll be a team effort. They'll get more done and better, good quality of work.
The future costs is when I get another unfunded mandate we're gonna have to do, but the advantage we've got right now is we have the new employee plus the gentleman who's doing working part-time is really doing very, very well. He's very happy with him, he works hard, he's got a lot of experience, and frankly, we wanna hang on to him. But you're right about the difference in the cost. And-
Right, so we're not spending an additional 45.
No,
No.
that's correct, and I apologize for not having the exact number here. Approximately 9,000 difference, approximately.
Sounds good.
Yep. But it's something, it's an expenditure, and we'll have to put it in the budget.
Right.
But what we need to do is find out if we can put this man on full-time now before the winter gets really fired up.
I'd like to make a motion that we hire Dennis Palmer, a part-time employee, as a full-time employee with the regular benefits.
Can we do that without warning it?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'll second the motion.
Under discussion, I'd like to do this without the individual's name in it because
Okay.
this will be a change to how we run the whole show, independent of a particular personality.
So it's the job that
It's
you're
the
hiring.
job
It's the
we're
job.
hiring. We're
Okay.
creating a new job.
All right, so I'm going to correct my motion to say that we
Are you
hire,
going to eliminate the part-time employee
Position.
position?
Yes,
right, so we're going to make the part-time employee a full-time employee with the usual benefits.
we're going to make a 4th full-time position.
Right.
Yes.
And eliminate the
The
part-time.
part-time
I don't want to put that in there just yet.
That was his question.
Having said that, this discussion, because we're having a discussion, and to answer your question, because you do bring up really good ideas, there is a potential at any one time for one or the other of our people not to be available, and a snowstorm to hit at the same time.
Yes.
So we may come a time where we need to bring a part-time person on board on a PRN basis. Oh, that's Latin. On an as-needed basis. Sorry about that. You're on the same page. So I don't want to say we're going to eliminate the part-time position because it's an as-needed kind of affair and we cannot predict illnesses.
Or some
and snowstorms.
vacation or
Or
something.
vacations. We can predict vacations.
Yeah, but-
Good luck in the winter.
Not
But other
winter
reasons.
storms.
Are we in the middle of a
So-
motion right now?
Yeah.
We're discussing.
We got the public included in our motion?
We shouldn't,
I'm sorry.
we shouldn't, we're going over.
Because,
Yeah,
well, are we in discussion
We're in
on this
discussion.
motion that may change?
well, we're
I've
discussing.
had nothing, I've heard nothing about this. I know I've only been the road commissioner for like a week or two. I haven't heard one thing about this from anybody on the board. Nobody said anything to me, not that it matters,
It's a good point.
but I'm just a little put off by that. And then that we've got a motion here, you don't have the other number for just a part-time number of what that would be, you know, that Joel was
Right,
asking
I hear you.
for.
We don't have his,
And it seems a little sudden, and, you know, I'm willing to talk about it, but I'll probably vote against it tonight.
I'm sorry, I thought you were on board with this.
Why
No,
don't we-
nobody, I haven't heard a thing about hiring a
Okay, why-
fourth full-time employee.
Why don't we table it?
That's not good.
Yes, no,
Why
I
don't-
agree with that, we should table it.
Why don't we table this
Okay,
till next meeting?
That ends that time.
Does that do anything
No,
for
it'll be
January, because we don't have a next meeting?
I didn't say we couldn't do it, I'm just saying.
No,
don't really
no,
need
because
to
he's
table it.
available and he will stay here with us, so.
It's a very good point, I agree with your point.
Yeah, you should know. I think
Oh,
sometimes.
even as a board
we-
member, I should know. Did you know?
No.
Yeah, no, I did not know either. So,
I did think that you were on board, sorry about that, I apologize for that. But tonight, I was bringing us all on board.
Okay.
That was the point of
So
tonight.
it makes sense,
All right,
there's no
so we're
rush,
gonna-
we still have him.
Right,
If there's an emergency, he'll be working in
he's
effect
always working
full-time.
for us now. Right now, he's part-time, full-time.
Mhm.
Oh, he can work full-time now?
He's the
Yes,
guy who
he's
runs
been
the
working
one-time?
full-time.
Okay,
He has been working
Because I-
full-time. He just doesn't have the benefits. He's not a full-time,
okay,
so there's no benefits, but he is working full-time.
okay. That sounds good, because I would hate to see with our numbers not up there and a storm coming tomorrow.
So we have four as we would.
Right.
The
Right.
difference is, as you pointed out, he's not collecting full-time benefits yet.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that's
the only
different.
thing.
Okay,
And that was our attempt to bring him on board.
Okay, so that wasn't even on our agenda anyway.
No, it wasn't, it was one of those
So
things
we
that popped
don't-
up this weekend.
We'll just,
All right, so we're in the middle of discussion, the motion's still on the table. Can we
I withdraw.
table it before we vote on it?
If you table it, it's off until someone takes it off the table and brings it up at the next meeting, I think.
right.
Then let's table it and we'll bring it up at our
So
next
the end
meeting.
of it, until someone brings it up again.
Okay, all right, so it's
Okay,
tabled
so-
until our next meeting, which will be, what is our next meeting? July, or January,
Put
right?
it on the
Yeah,
agenda
January.
for the next meeting.
I will do that for sure,
Mhm.
yep. Alrighty then. The other item that came up suddenly, after I printed these minutes and this agenda, we had a request for the Muzzi Fund. It went to the committee met and voted against the request. So that did not go through.
Do we have an arrangement here with neighborhood connections?
This was an unusual one, it started with neighborhood connections, and they said it was.
But do we have a contract with neighborhood
Not
connections?
yet, not yet. No, that's a memorandum of understanding. Before we finish it.
We should probably
We should.
do that.
We absolutely should, and as soon as all the other stuff that's chasing me around the room is done, it's on.
So how can we bring that, it's too late to do it today, because does that have to be a motion to,
Memorandum of understanding?
with neighborhood connections?
Yeah.
That has to be a motion, so we can bring that for the next meeting.
Well,
Haven't
I'm
we
not
already
sure.
done all that?
What's that?
Haven't we done all that?
We've
Seems
done,
like it.
that we've
We've already
agreed,
done the motion that we were gonna do that.
yes, but the actual memorandum of understanding needed to be worked out between the town and neighborhood connections. And we're working on that, and she and I have other things going on. It's not been a priority up until we get these
Up
requests.
until today.
Well,
this
And
request.
we're
But they
still,
would
the-
have, but
we're
they
still
would
the
have,
fiduciary people,
Yeah,
right?
we always-
So
so we
we have
always
to
cover.
the funding,
we always will be.
yes.
Yeah, we will be there.
Right.
But we should finalize this at some point, so they will take care of this, and then we can disband that committee.
Well, that is the intent eventually. We're just running out of hours of the week.
Okay.
Having said this, they actually went, applicant went to the neighborhood connections first. And neighborhood connections sent us back to us because it wasn't an appropriate request for either of us. Okay, the last thing we need to do tonight, unless there's something else I've forgotten already,
I don't think so.
I think I covered all the big pieces, is we need to vote on whether or not an executive session would be in the best interests of the town to discuss the ongoing settlement issue. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we go into executive session.
You have to do
You
it.
have to do your little thing.
Look at the minutes from the last meeting, or
We all should have one
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
Joel, you were gonna make
I
this,
was going to, and I will this week. I will make it this week.
remember?
I do remember, and I'll make it.
I probably did have one somewhere.
I've got one, but his is so much better.
I should just memorize it.
Where do
Number
I,
7.
where do I find it? Number 7.
Number 7.
Okay.
Boldface. Only don't use mine.
Okay, I will use your name. I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding the town's employment situation.
Legal,
Legal dispute.
jeez, help me.
Whatever you said the first
Personnel?
time was,
Personnel issue?
Sure.
Okay. Regarding the town's personnel issue would clearly place the town and the potential contractor
Potential
individual at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if it discusses the proposed, what was it
Legal
again?
issue.
Legal issue in terms, legal issues
in public. I second the motion.
Any further discussion? Just chatting amongst ourselves, giving Lexa to get it all written out.
So what we're saying is we want to have this in private. Does anybody disagree with that?
Exactly.
In private.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we
Now we
agree.
need another,
Yeah,
You need
so
the
we
second
agree.
motion.
Yeah.
Okay, the second motion is, I move that the board enter executive session to discuss the town's personnel issue with one,
That's, you start out there.
under the provision of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We will go into executive session, and I don't believe there will be any voting afterwards, so I think, Rich, you don't need to hang around.